province. Thank you so much. But I want to express my gratitude to these, if you categorize, they would be VIPs, but there are people beyond VIPs. They would be VVIPs. And that's the industry, all of you. Can you please stand and all of you, really, all of you. I want to... but this applause is not enough, man. Can I hear the round of applause? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. That sounds like creatives in the true sense of the word now. And let's stick to that. One of the things we're going to do, which has been supported, is that this is going to be an annual event. It has to be an annual event. So that we're able to take stock of what we did today and as we go on. But just coming once a year together is not going to make the trick if there is no ongoing work. So the people here, if you like them or if you don't like them, you change them. But the reference group has to meet quarterly. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. Firstly, there are a lot of things which we left hanging, precisely because of the nature of the work we are doing. So we need work streams to continue, to drill down to specifics, so that that which needs to be done is done, that which needs to be referred elsewhere, including to government, is referred to government. Let me make an example. Lungisani and many others spoke of the funding model. And he says, where is it? And he says that we need to find a way of developing this model which will categorize the levels of funding and how you do that funding. Somebody must drill down to that. Somebody must really put on the table that kind of model so that at the end of the day, it's not about the department, but it's about the industry. So that's one of the things which has to be done. The issue you've also raised is the issue of the stakeholders, all of them. Stakeholders have to be invited to be part of the process. This is a long process we're embarking on. So we need that. We take the point about the synergy or synergies in government that you have delegated to us with the Deputy Minister, that we should follow that up. There are many other examples and points you've made, which I think that they would be taken on board. One thing which was not prominent, though, throughout 2 days, our 2 days, we may have referred to it in obscured fashion, is specific training on technical capacity in the industry. I think with all the programs and suggestions on what needed to be done, we need to pay attention to that. We need to pay attention to that because the past 5 years, what we sought to do was to support and build institutions, particularly academies, because uppermost in our minds has been about training, education, and development. That goes with research and development through our funding of SACO, South African Cultural Observatory, and such institutions. But all in all, we have been here looking at a lot of things fundamentally about our identity as South Africa. Just look at you. Look around you. You represent South Africa, the demographics of this country. And the demographics of this country has to be represented in whatever we do, because until 1994, South Africa was an outcast state. And our story was told through cracked glasses of our erstwhile colonizers. And we can't keep on harping on that 25 years down the line, because we must do now. Not complain. So this summit for us, charge all of us to steal a view from our rear mirror in order to understand where we are as we move forward and project into the future, into the horizon. And that horizon there has, by and large, the fourth industrial revolution. And that's what an innovation. And that's where we are going. Some have already arrived there. We may be lagging behind, but what we committed ourselves, following from the input by Professor Marwala, is that we're not going to be 60 years behind, like it happened before. Now, this horizon makes us to imagine this future. And in imagining this future, we need to be practical. It means that what we know as workplaces or work or jobs is going to be reconfigured. It's going to be reconfigured. Robotics are here. Artificial intelligence is here with us. The question is, as the conference asked, are we geared? And in order for us to be geared, we need to equip ourselves and empower ourselves so that we are not going to say that it's the new situation and there's no hope. There is hope. It's the transformation of the landscape which we need to adapt to. But we need to tell our story. That's what we're about, telling our story. And what is our story? And when we tell our story, not through those prisms, but through our own, tell the story to debunk the myth that life in this country started in 1652, when a man called Jan van Riebeeck arrived. We must debunk that myth. We have a duty to do that so that those who come after us understand the reality and the truth. We need to tell them about where we come from. The pre-colonial state of Mapungubwe, which is recorded in the 10th and 11th century. And even at that time, working with the world. trading and so on. That kingdom of Mapungubwe is important to tell the people about it. We must tell our story of this pre-colonial era, of a wealthy Tswana city of Kweneng. We must tell people about this. Is long before this guy came. You know that guy? Who's always referred to as the starting point of our history. It's not. We had history, the pre-colonial history. This Kweneng, which was later named Suikerbosrand Hills, even as they told this narrative, this 1652 narrative of Jan van Riebeeck, they make as if this was the leader, and he was not. He was not. He came, and there were leaders, and leaders stood up. The Stearman brothers, David Stearman, we repatriated him some 2 years ago from Australia. Klaas Stearman, the Khoi leaders, Domen, the first prisoner at the Robben Island, Ochumato. Why would we talk about Jan van Riebeeck and not talk about these people? We need to be telling this story, because if we don't do that, we'll think that we have a story when we're telling something else. Our people, in all their diversity, have shown hatred to racism, to colonialism, to imperialism. Kratoa, who a lady, a Khoi lady, who resisted when Jan van Riebeeck and crew called her Eve or Eva. And he said, no, I'm Kratoa. She cried, actually. And said, no, I'm an African, I'm Kratoa. I'm not, that name is not mine. This is the question of identity. We need to be telling a story more, Masego, about Sarah Baartman. Her life here in this country now, after their repatriation. Our story is the story of Makhado. Makhado is us, we are Makhado. That's our story. Our story is the story of Sekhukhune, of Hintsa, of Maqoma, of Makhanda Kanxele. That's the story we want people to know. And there is no medium perfect than the film and television industry to tell the story. Because as we tell the story, we'll be exposing our own heritage through this medium. As you move around there on the screen, we'll be seeing some Lungisani with his traditional cap there. We'll be seeing our African artifacts and so on and so forth. We ought to tell our story. It would be incomplete if we don't tell them about Nyabela and don't tell them about Mushweshwe, and tell a story behind the story. When you say Mushweshwe, you have to tell the story about Morena Mohlomi. And people have to know Ndlambe. Have to know the Eastern Frontier Wars. But when you tell a story about Ndlambe, you have to tell people about Makhanda kaNxele. That city there, which was wrongly named and called Grahamstown, named after the most vicious, violent human being who ever walked planet Earth, called Colonel Graham, John Graham, whose motto was that for amaXhosa, you must apply maximum terror. He would maim and butcher women, children, everybody, burn their livestock. When they come and beg for mercy, butcher and kill them. And we call our cities that man? That's beyond reconciliation. It's capitulation. And it cannot be. I'm told there are people who are resisting. We will fight till the bitter end, because they have no idea what they are starting. We've got to tell the story of the general himself, King Cetshwayo. Immediately after the Battle of Isandlwana in 1879, Frederick Engels, comrade to Karl Marx, wrote about that war. And he said that no European power has been able to make the British imperialist forces to taste defeat, but the warriors of this general Cetshwayo did. We want to hear the story. Want to hear the story of our people, John Colenso, Reverend John Colenso. If you go to KwaZulu-Natal in the Midlands, there is a place called Colenso. And you go to Maritzburg, there is a township called Sobantu, named after John Colenso. As a missionary minister of religion, he decided to side with the cause for justice and the cause of the indigenous people of this country. In his family, it ran through the family. Harriet Colenso, the daughter to Reverend John Colenso, distinguished herself. In fact, he helped people in that part of the country in the formation in 1901 of what was known as Natal Native Congress, or Congolose Wase-Natal. We need to hear the story of Nehemiah Tile Wabatembu, founded the Tembu Church. Reverend Mngoni of the Ethiopian Church, that we need to hear. But let us be clear. We are not fighting a blind fight. We have a guiding light as a society. Our guiding light is to build a united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic and prosperous society. So we have no issue with anything, any color. We have an issue with an action. And what is that action? Racism and many other intolerances. But we must also be clear that, you know, it was Z.K. Matthews, the grandfather to my colleague, Minister Naledi Pandor, who asked in 52, 53, that you have said you don't want racism, you don't want this, that, and the other, but what do you stand for? We hear what you are against. What are you for? What we are for is what I've just said. That's our strategic objective. We must fight this thing called racism because it's not just a prejudice. It's a pernicious ideology. Those who are not at the receiving end would not feel that pain. It's pernicious. We've got to fight it. And in 2016, we outlined the way to fight this scourge. Firstly, by agitation and mobilizing everybody to be intolerant. There shouldn't be any moment where you are tolerant of racism as a society. Because we have experience. So let's agitate all the time. Let's reject, condemn, do everything, mobilize against it. As one of the three-pronged approach to this. The second one is what is de-education and re-educating people into the new ethos, underpinned by Ubuntu. Some of the people are really lacking understanding. And some of them, when they get to understand how painful this thing is, some change. So it means as a society also, we do have a responsibility of education. The third of that is the legislation. Criminalize racism. And that's the path we're taking. That's the path we're taking. There are incorrigible people you can cook, put in a pot a stone and put them. The stone would be much better. When you come back and touch it, it will be softer than them. There you can't do anything. Criminalize. Criminalize racism. You'd have helped a lot. But I think we should help each other to say that whilst we continue, and we should continue, with radical socio-economic transformation of this country without any apology. We should continue with that. Because anywhere else in the world, political power is important to access economic emancipation. We have no illusion that our project of social cohesion has to be able to deal with this fundamental issue of economic justice. We have to deal with the three resilient fault lines in our society of poverty, unemployment, inequality. We continue on that path. But never forget that this is the land of bears no day. That the color of skin of people is not a determination of their character. Bears no day decided to defy his own, putting his life at risk for social justice. This is the land of Yusuf Dadoo, who did everything and became one of the people who were banned in this country. Strini Moodley, Father Trevor Huddleston, Bram Fisher, Alex Laguma, George Bezos, Ahmed Katrada, Ronika Srills, Sophie de Bruyn. The list is long. The point we are making here is that we are not directionless. We are not fighting color, and we should never be in a situation to fight color. let's use what we have to advance our society. We need to grow South Africa. We need to fight like Makhado, like Cetshwayo, like Maqoma. We must fight illiteracy. We must fight disease today. We must fight poverty. When we come like this, we should come up amongst us. There must be a Cetshwayo who would have excelled in the field of fighting for economic justice in our land today. Languages, talking identity, language becomes critical. And we'll continue to develop languages. English and Afrikaans were developed over a period of time. One thing I respect about the leadership of the Afrikaners was that after that poor urban Afrikaner phenomenon, after what they called the Anglo-Boer War, which was a South African war, because when they say Anglo-Boer War, they don't factor in Africans who were part and parcel and who died as a result of that war. But after that war, the Afrikaner leadership came with what is called the Regstellende Akse. And they identified this poor urban Afrikaner. They went ahead on the affirmative action because they said they were not competing on equal grounds with their English counterparts. In fact, they resisted English as a medium of instruction. They resisted to sing the national anthem, God Save the King. They adopted affirmative action. So those today right-wingers who are opposing affirmative action, when they've benefited, whether it's financial institutions, whether it's educational institutions, you can name them, all of them. We know them. No, we've got to create a situation where you level the playing field. We introduced BEE. BEE did not deliver what we wanted. It became an elitist thing. We said it must be broad-based. And it has to be broad-based so that people are able to benefit out of that. So language becomes important. Indigenous languages will continue to ensure that we develop them. We have an English museum in the city of Makhanda in the Eastern Cape. We'll further refurbish it and so on. We'll open it. But what we said is that English museum is there to develop the language English. But Makhanda city is located where the majority of people there speak isiXhosa. So therefore, the English museum is going to be English and isiXhosa museum going forward. Another languages development would continue. We have, as government, agreed that whilst developing indigenous languages, we also are part of the continent. We are Africa, and we're part of Africa. That we must always remember and remind ourselves. Kiswahili is going to be taught, because if you do that, you'll be able to connect with other African brothers and sisters elsewhere, starting from your neighbors here. I saw one of the guests today, maybe she left, who's been teaching Swahili. I said to her, because we agreed with Minister Motshekga that we are going to be amongst the first students, you know, to learn Swahili. So I said she must teach me a few things so that when I go to Cape Town, I'm ahead of Minister Mtsekga. I say a thing or two in Swahili. But it's real, and it has to happen. You are creatives. You talk choreography, you choreograph what you do. Where is Devin? He was here. When he was giving the report here, I was not sure. Where is he? Oh, I was not sure whether you are really giving the report or, you see, you are doing your things. But I'm saying in telling this story, we must tell the story of choreography. One of the elders in my village saw the Tswana dance. And she said to me, hey, ngiyayithanda lento, hey, badansa kamnandi labantu. We know Tswana dance, just Khoi. And it's loved by everybody. But when you talk choreography, this is where, as Africans, we started. Because when you look at what they do, you must understand the story behind. And this is the story we must tell. Because what they do, both Khoi and Tswana, they would have gone to hunt and cornered an antelope, killed it, ate it, and then rested. And after resting, they then mimic what they were doing. When you see them dancing, they are mimicking the act of hunting. They are mimicking animals themselves, the kind of things animals do. It's our story. We've got to tell it. People talk about content. The content we're talking about is not content from Harlem or anywhere else. It's the content from our own villages. Let's know your story. Who are you? Wena ubani? Katie, who are you? Typical South Africans would know, their parents would know their grandparents. Beyond that, they wouldn't know much. But it's our duty, we must know who we are. We must know who we are. Be proud of who we are, not for its sake, so that you know who others are, and there's cross-pollination of who all of you are and what unites you. A human being will have a multifaceted identities. And in all those identities, we should know them. But there's, as I conclude, one major thing in our lives as Africans, which we underplay, and the world is looking at us. We've been able to teach the world what Ubuntu is. One thing, we should ensure that not only the world, but our own are taught about Ubuntu. But we must start loving ourselves. How are other people going to love us if we don't love ourselves? We have heroes here. You know, we have a group which has won 5 Grammy Awards, and it's here in South Africa. And it has a story. And somebody's telling that story. There's one young lady there who's telling the story. Sorry, lady, can you stand up? Very young lady. Very young lady. This group of Ladysmith Black Mambazo, and there are many other Ladysmith Black Mambazos in different fields. But the story of a group which next year, in 2 years' time, what's the year now? 2019? This year. But it was 2019 in January. So it's 2019 the whole year. So the group is turning 60 next year. They've never split as a group. But their story is an important story, not only what they won, but as a case study that they've been united for all these years. The people you don't see there in the group today are either passed on or have retired, right? The group you see now are the sons of the founders of Ladysmith Black Mambazo. But the story doesn't end there. The people who are taking the world by storm today is a group called The Legacy. The Legacy are the sons of the ones who are Mambazo today. So this is the third generation. Somebody must tell the story. Somebody must tell the story. Thank you very much for attending, and all the best. We will stick to what we have to do, and we'll overcome. This country has to overcome all the intolerances. We have to. We have no choice but to win. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. We appreciate that. And I think please, let's take our seats, ladies and gentlemen. Ours is to, as we do the vote of thanks, but I think the main message then, Minister, you have sent is that as we tell our story and our storyline, using our own scenery and our own beauty of our own country, our own actors, our own productions, our own filmmakers, we should be able to transmit the essence of our identity. And we really appreciate that guidance. And I'm sure that as we live here, you already have the script, isn't it? Let's tell our story. And Minister said the best platform is the film and television industry. So we are now moving to a close, but the way forward from here, as we had agreed, is that the reference group will continue to do their work to consolidate the report, translate that report into medium as well as long-term implementation strategy. We had pledges that were made. We must make sure those pledges are translated into concrete support of the film and television as well as animation industry, so that at the end of the day, our children can inherit the best ever South African film industry, that you and me had laid a foundation for them to reap the rewards. So we would like to thank you, Minister, first and foremost, and the Deputy Minister for having graced this particular summit and make sure that we are able to get together and bring our minds and then be able to forge the way ahead. But also would like to thank the reference group that has been able to really bring us this far. And I think the outcomes will speak for themselves, as the message was clear that we must not have a talk show, and that is why the implementation plan will be then developed by the reference group from today, so that at the end of the day we've got a tangible plan against which we will plan our progress. We'd like to thank all the organizers, officials of DAC, with Lindy as a leader, Lindy, really worked hard to coordinate and work with the team. In support of that also, together, we would like to thank, of course, the poet who opened for us here. We appreciate that. When we started here, he gave us a sense of what we mean when we're saying land now. This land question must be addressed now. And through his poet, he was able to send a message. We would like to thank our international guests who participated, all the speakers who rendered quite thought-provoking speeches, and I'm sure that they have really probed into our thoughts and our consciences on how best we can take this film sector forward. We would like to thank all the facilitators and rapporteurs, the Sky Ring owners and the managers and the team that worked with us to make sure that this venue was quite and most conducive to host such an august summit. We would like to thank SAPS as well as the Metro Police, who made sure that everything was done in a great sense of security and really in an orderly manner, and just to make sure that our access into this building was unhindered. We would like to thank all those whom I might not have mentioned here, who really made today a great success. The 2 days has really been fruitful. Let's take South Africa's film sector, the film industry forward, and let us be geared towards embracing the fourth industrial revolution, so that this fourth industrial revolution does not leave us behind. It's either you adapt or you die. And the choice is clear. We have to adapt. We would like to thank all of you, the audience, for having spent your time over the 2 days, setting aside everything else you needed to do to be with us here. We really appreciate that. Minister, I'd already asked that you put your hands together for yourselves, but can we just do it one more time? Thank you very much to all of you. The summit is now officially closed. Thank you very much.